Well, let's just read. By the end of the hour, you should be able to remember how to do a base change. We did do that before. That's not new. Watch out for extraneous and missing solutions. That's a review also. I told you about extraneous yesterday. Solutions that you did nothing wrong, but they don't work. And use more exponent properties to solve equations. Okay, so the exponents are just going to get trickier. All right, before we get into these notes, I want to make sure you get the old stuff. So here's a 9 to the 2x equals 3. Please solve by making the bases the same. The bases aren't the same. Well, you can make them be the same. You can't just erase 9 and put 3, because 3 and 9 aren't the same thing. You can't just say 9 turns into 3. It doesn't. But that 9 could be replaced with a 3 squared, as long as you know what to do with that. 3 squared. And now, this one needs an exponent. I'm putting a 1 there. How come it needs an exponent? Because once the bases are the same, the exponents are equal. 4x equals 1. X equals 1/4. Raise your hand if you had that. Perfect. Nice. All right, here's the trickiest kind like that. Let me think. 8 to the 2x equals 16. So you can't make 16 into 8 to a power. It doesn't work. Could make 16 into 4 squared, but then 8 isn't the same as 4, and then you can't make 8 into a 4. What on earth are you going to do? I hope you realized that you could replace the 16 and the 8 with 2's done creatively. 16 is 2 to the 4th, and 8 is 2 to the 3rd. Then I got to remember to put this 2x back into the problem. And now the bases are the same, so the answers, exponents, are equal. That's 6x equals 4. Divide by 6, divide by 6. 4 sixths, of course, 2/3. Raise your hand if you had 2/3. Okay, nice. Any questions on that kind? All right, do you remember the extraneous solutions ones? Write this down, please. X plus 4 equals square root of 5x. Would you solve this one and then check and see if your answer comes out extraneous? Leah, how do I start? What do I do to both sides?
Square.
Perfect. And the square just takes off the square root, and it's as simple as x plus 4. I know some of you are thinking about the absolute value. This is not that time. If you had just put in those square roots, then we'd be talking about absolute values. Squaring doesn't cause any absolute values. All right, there we go. Then I'm taking away x from both sides. And now I have 4 equals 4x, x equals 1. Raise your hand if you had x equals 1. Awesome. Did you check it, though? Did you check 1 and see if it actually worked? Square root of 5 equals square root of 5. Nothing wrong with that. 1 worked. Yay. Do you get sometimes you put it back in and it causes you to do a square root of a negative, and then that's like a fail? If we had gotten the answer of -2, if at the end our answer had come out -2, you would stick it back in here and go, wait a minute. That side actually would have been all right, but this side, you can't do the square root of -10, and you would have said, oh, cross it off. Your answer that you had down there of that, you'd go, nope, extraneous. That's how you label something as extraneous. All right, now we're all reviewed up, and we're ready to get into the notes for today. This one, you'll have to solve a different way. We're getting more creative with these exponents. The first one isn't too bad. You just got to multiply them, simplify it down a little bit. And I did remember that there's no calculators on this test. Partially because we'd be a little afraid that you'd think, oh, I'm just going to type it all in. And you probably could on some of these. So there won't be calculators allowed in this test. So these guys get multiplied, and that makes 9 over 6. And 4 to the 9 over 6 can be reduced. I like to reduce this way. 9 is like 3 times 3. 6 is like 2 times 3. And then those 3's will cancel. 3 over 2. But then do you know what that means? Square root of 4, and then put it to the third. The top of these are normal powers, so you're just going to put it to the normal third power, but square root it first. So that makes 8. Raise your hand if you had 8. Awesome. Did you check it? Did you have to check it? No, you don't have to check it, but is there some problems on this test where the answer won't actually work? Yeah, but I warned you which kinds to check. It'd be a little bit like, let's say you're a teacher at the dance, and a kid walks up to walk in, and he's wearing a gigantic backpack. The teacher is probably be trained to check that guy a little closer, because like, why do you need a giant backpack to go into the dance? They're going to check that. All right, well, if you have the square roots, double check those. This kind, you don't have to look at it as closely, but I mean, hey, it could happen at any time. It really could. All right, on this one, I like to do this with knowing that these powers here can be subtracted. Do you remember that deal? Do you agree that the powers like that can be subtracted? In case you forgot, let's say I had x to the 8th over x to the 5th. Do you get the answer to that would be x to the 3rd? Right? Because don't you just take this minus this? Yeah, that's what you do. So this would be 2 to the x minus 8 equals 2. And now the bases are the same. So the exponents can be equal. Well, this doesn't have an exponent, so I'm going to put an exponent of 1. And all of a sudden, x minus 8 has to equal 1. Add 8 to both sides, x equals 9. Now, if you're like, I don't feel like that's right, well, then check it. I think it's 9. Go stick a 9 here, see if it works. 2 to the 9th over 2 to the 8th. Yeah, that would work, because that'd be 2 to the 1, which is 2. It worked. See, I can check it and make sure. All right. Next up. This gets to be more and more intense about how to, like, use your knowledge of exponents to rewrite the problem a little different. On this kind, do you normally subtract the exponents? Don't you normally add the exponents? Like whatever's here and whatever's here, wouldn't you normally add those? If you really understand these, it's kind of like 2 to the 5th times 2 to the 7th. Do you get that this is equal to 2 to the 12th? You just add the exponents. Do you get that? So that's what you do. It's 2 to the, and then add the exponents. Negative x plus 8 equals 4. Oh, well, I can just change that to 2 squared. And now the bases are the same. From there, it ought to be easy. I need to know how many of you figured that out before I said it. Awesome. Okay. Final answer on this one. Negative x plus 8 equals the other exponent, 2. Subtract 8 from both sides. Negative x equals negative 6. X equals regular 6. And if I wasn't positive, I'd just take and put a 6 here and see if that works. When you add those exponents together, that's going to be 2 to the second, which is 4. Worked. Yes?
Why wouldn't you multiply the two 2's together?
All right. Let's just do let's go like this. I'm going to change it to a 3 just to make you see if you understand this. If this was 3 to the 4th times 3 to the 5th, let's process this. That's 3 to the 9th, right? So what you asked me is, why didn't you multiply the 2 3's? Well, you don't have to because you've already got that covered with all of its powers here. So another way to say it is, this is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and the 3 to the 5th, that's like 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and it's a times in between. So I did multiply the 3's together. I just did it with the power. See? It's a total of 9 of them. I was there. So same thing here. We did multiply the 2's together. It's just that we did it with the powers. Okay. All right, so that was that one. How about this one? Well, the first thing you should do is simplify it. Can you make the problem any simpler? Yeah, you definitely can. You remember me using the example of my dad, like in the condo, didn't necessarily like the top floor, like the bottom floor. Well, these guys want to move up there. Could you do it with subtracting? Yeah, but then you're going to be all confused about like 2 minus negative 3, and then should that be on the top or should it be on the bottom? I think it's easier to just move those up. And then 5/10 is a half. That's really easy. So I'd go 1/2, and then I'd go, those x's moved to the top, and they became positive, and that's positive x to the 5th equals 16. And that's a 5. Now I multiply both sides by 2. X to the 5th equals 32. Feels like I'm going to get an answer here of, 5th root. Did you remember that? X equals 2. All right, now something came up yesterday in the homework, and only one kid noticed it. And it was a problem just like this, except it was an even one. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. I'm just going to write another one just like this, except it's going to be an even one. X to the 2nd equals, let's say, 16. Let's say it had that. And then you just go, well, I'm going to put it to the 1/2 power. And x equals 4. Wrong. Yes. So what's the moral of the story? How come this one's actually not plus or minus 2? Because it's an odd root. The root you did is odd. This right here is a square root. It's an even root. So technically you have an absolute value. It's just as much as if you had just square rooted both sides. That's what gives you 2 answers. X equals 4. X equals negative 4. Oh, they are totally going to get you on the test on that one. Because in the middle of doing this really complicated problem, you have to notice that you just square rooted both sides with an even power. So watch out for it. I bet it happens again before the end of the day today. If we ever do a even root on both sides, you're going to get 2 answers, like positive and negative 4. All right, move on to the next page. Oh, it's getting more and more complicated, but honestly, really not that bad. The only thing here is in terms of y means there's going to be y's in the terms of your answer. So in other words, it's okay to have the y in the answer. In terms of y means there's going to be a y in the terms. So don't be surprised when the answer has y in it. All right, so first thing, 4/8. I hope you saw that right away and you're like, ooh, 1/2. That's a great way to start. And simplify it down as much as you can and then get x alone. You're solving for x. Look, it says solve for x. In terms of y just means there's y's in the answer. I'm going to pause while you try both of these. All right, let's see how you did. These guys move up and join those guys. You got x to the 5th, and then you got a y on the bottom still. There's nothing canceling it out, so it's there. Now, I'm supposed to get x alone. I know these can be confusing, but just keep asking yourself, if I got x alone, I'd be done. So how do I get x alone? You times both sides by 2y is correct. Because that cancels that. Okay, now I got x to the 5th. It's close to alone, but it's not alone. 1 times 2y is 2y. And now how do I get x to the 5th alone? I put it to the power of 1/5. And there is your answer. I know it looks confusing, but that's your answer. Now, is this the kind where there's 2 answers? No, but did you even think about that? If you thought about it, you win. But if that had been an even power, then there'd be a plus and a minus on it. That's going to catch so many people. There's your final answer. 2y to the 1/5. Yes?
Can we write it like the square root of 5?
Yes, if you had said 5th root, here, let me show you. If you, instead of this, you did this with a 5 right there, that's legal. I don't think it's quite as good, though, because how are you going to put that in the calculator? Know what I mean? So I kind of like the other way better with the 1/5 here, because you could actually type that in if it didn't have a y. But there's no calculators in this test anyway, so I would accept either one. All right, how about this one? Well, 2 and the 9 don't reduce this time. But the x's can go together, and that make x squared, so 2x squared is good. And the y's on the bottom can go together, so 9y to the 8th equals 2. These can be overwhelming. We're trying to solve for x. We want x alone. That's the thing you want alone. So the first step would be to times both sides by 9y to the 8th. And that makes that cancel. And now x is pretty close to alone. 9 times 2 is 18, so I'm just going to put an 18 right there. Okay, now I'm going to divide both sides by 2 to get that 2 off of there. X squared equals, and dividing by 2 gives me 9y to the 8th. And the last piece, again, why I think it's better to do 1/2 power. I think it'll be easier to do. X equals, I know what's going on. If you think, oh, you forgot something, just wait, I'm not done yet. 9 square root is 3. And then 8 multiplied by the 1/2 gives me y to the 4th. And now is the time to notice that something's wrong. Anybody know?
Plus or minus.
Plus and minus. I warned you it was going to happen later today. Look at that. We did an even root on both sides. So this is technically the absolute value. I would have been okay with you at that moment, instead of putting absolute values, putting a plus and minus right there. But the way I like to show it is it's absolute value, and so then there's 2 answers. X equals 3y and x equals negative 3y. Woo! That's about as intense as it gets, but hey, I am warning you up front that that's probably going to happen. Square roots on both sides. I don't know how many times I can tell you that that's probably going to happen. All right, and now we have problems just like that. We just did a bunch together. I'm hoping you caught that, but if not, this is a point where you'd be able to ask me. Find the Schoology quiz. It is longish, but you have a ton of time, and it gives you the answers after your first try. But I want to warn you, those of you that are new to me, whenever I do Schoology quizzes, I give you the average of your 2 scores. I know some of you came from teachers that would just give you the highest score, and could put in crap answers and it wouldn't hurt. Then you can see if they were right or not. For me, you get the average of 2 tries. So try hard on your first time, but after the first try, I give you the answers. So then, the second try, you should get it perfect, right? So at least you know what you did wrong. I kind of hate it when it marks it wrong and I don't know why it's wrong. I don't know if it's because I forgot a negative or if I just typed it wrong or what. So I give you the answers after your first try. All right, that's all I got for you for today. So